Okay, ladies, I think we're going to get started. I hope you can hear me. I tend to be kind of loud. You have noticed my husband is a talker. I am a talker as well. So to compete, I had to get really loud. So I hope my voice carries just fine. I've got the microphone thing going on, but I think it's connected here. And I have to remember that I need to be here. I am a wanderer. So I have to remember there's people watching. Hi. Okay. Wayne mentioned that it was his idea that we do this seminar. And when he suggested it, oh man, I'm like, what do you mean give a marriage seminar? Because I'm looking at us going, our marriage is not perfect. What are we going to share that would be enlightening to anyone? What are we going to do? And he said, no, you do ladies' days and things. This won't be uncomfortable for you. We'll sit down, we'll talk about it, we'll put some material together, and we'll do a marriage seminar. And I prayed about it and said, okay, I'll do that. And I said, okay, but you want me to do breakout sessions. What kind of lessons are you thinking? And he said, well, I thought the first one should be on the role of the wife. And I actually think my eyes rolled when he said that. I'm like, oh, brother. Because all I could think was, as women, as Christian women, we get the role of the wife a lot in the church. You get it more, actually, than we hear about the role of the husband. We hear a lot about the role of the wife. But he said, Tam, I want you to do this. I think it's a good foundation, a good starting point, especially with the women. And he said, just give them your point of view. That'll be different. And I went, okay, I can do that. So I started thinking about, okay, what was my life as a young wife? What was my life like? Well, Wayne and I got married in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, and the next day moved to Denver, Colorado. And I remember I had been married about 6 weeks, and I kind of looked up and looked around and went, hey, where's my mom? And all the newness was kind of wearing off, and I was trying to figure out what a wife looked like. And I wasn't my mom. My personality is a lot different than my mom's. The older I get, the more alike we're becoming. But I was different than my mom. So I was trying to figure out, okay, what does the role of a godly wife look like? And I started going to ladies' classes, and that helped me. But I had to remember, I had to step back just a little bit as I was looking at this whole role of a godly wife. I had to step back a minute. And I mentioned earlier in the seminar about how so often we get into marriage thinking I'm going to be fulfilled. It's going to all be about me. I kind of think that was my thinking at that point. I'd never been taught anything different. I didn't know. And I realized that when I made those vows to Wayne, in sickness and in health, all of those nice vows that you don't remember because you don't remember what you said because you don't remember your wedding day, you're just rushing through it. But I remembered that the vows that I made that day, I didn't just make those to Wayne. I made those to God. And I knew in my heart that I had made these promises to God that I would love Wayne. I would figure this out. And I looked up and decided I needed all the help I could get. And I started reaching out. We were blessed at that point. We lived in the Denver area, and there was a wonderful congregation we were a part of, the Bear Valley congregation there. At that time, the women were awesome. And here I came. I told you my kids came quickly. I came into ladies' Bible class, and I have my troop of children. And I asked, can I come to class? Can I drop my kids off in the nursery? I'll take my turn babysitting. I'll do that. I just need adult interaction. I need some people in my life that don't talk back to me, that have adult conversation with me. And they said, yeah, take your turn. Well, then I was also doing daycare in my home because that was how I helped provide financially for our family. So every now and then I'd have 2 or 3 others, and I'm going, is this okay too? Yeah, bring them on in. We'll be all right. It was a huge blessing for me. It helped me connect to some of the older women in the congregation, and they started loving on me. They weren't spanking me. They built relationships with me and started sharing wisdom with me, and it was so, so helpful. I had this one woman She said, okay, as you're going through this process, let's talk about, because at that point, we actually were talking about the godly wife in ladies' Bible class. And so she says, as we go through each point, do you want to do lunch after class and we can talk about it? And I said, I would love that, because I can read in scripture what it says. I just need to know, how do I apply that to my life? How do I make that work for me? And so she was that person for me. So one of the first things we talked about was that as a wife, you will be, the word we used back in my day was the helpmeet. Everybody said you were going to be his helpmeet. And so I looked at, I use the New American Standard Version most of the time. And I looked at that and it says, God created a helper suitable for Adam. He paraded all the animals by, there wasn't anybody for him. So he created a helper suitable for him. And I started thinking about a helper suitable for Wayne. And I actually started laughing when I told Mary Ann. I went, a helper suitable? You don't understand who we are. I said, we are so different. I mentioned we only dated 4 months. We moved into our first apartment together, and Wayne is putting his desk in order. And he's got his little desk drawer out, and he's got all these little divider things, and everything has a place, and the pencils are in order from used to not used, and they're color coordinated. And I mean it. I remember walking by going, whoa, looking at that, going, that's impressive. And so I'd gone in the bedroom then, and I took my box of socks and underwear, and I took it into the drawer, and I was putting it away. And Wayne walks in, and he goes, hey, what are you doing there? And I said, I'm unpacking my socks and underwear. And he goes, you're gonna fold those, right? And I went, huh? Who folds socks and underwear? And he goes, I think most everybody else. And I went, well, not me. I don't fold socks and underwear. And I thought, so I'm telling Mary Ann this. I'm going, this is who we are. I have married the wrong person. I am not a helper suitable for this man. I don't know how to do that. And she said, relax, relax. You're female. When God created Adam, he paraded the animals by. He created a female for Adam. She says, that part you've got. Just understand that God created the male and the female to balance each other. And so that's what we do in our marriages. We balance each other. It's a process figuring out how that works. And then Wayne gave me a wonderful little nugget. We were looking at all of this again. We've rebuilt a lot of our material. So we were looking at all of this again. I'm getting my glasses. I'm back. Okay. And he was looking at this, that when they translated this term, this helper suitable, this helpmeet, it actually is, I don't pronounce words right, but it actually is the word ezer kanagdo. And ezer, the word ezer means strength. And when he put these words together, it means God created this female to be his assistant, his strength, to be his support. He can't make it without her. I loved that, because that's true. That's true. That's how a marriage should be. You're such one flesh that you can't make it without the other one. So God looked at Adam and said, you're not going to be able to make it on your own. You need Eve. And that's how we came to be in our marriages. The wife is this strength, this assistant. And as you go along, you figure out your personalities. You understand which one of you is better with money in your marriages. You understand which one of you is not as spastic. You might guess in my marriage who the spastic one is. It's my husband. It also is that balance between the heart, where we tend to be more emotional as women, and our husbands are kind of more in line. And so we balance things that way. So it's figuring out how you are that strength to your husband, that assistant to your husband. I love that term. It's so strong. God meant for us to have strength in our marriages. He meant us to be those people in our marriages. And then the next thing that Mary Ann talked about, as we were talking about the things in our role as a godly wife, the word submissive came up. We are to be submissive. And I told Marianne, I said, I struggle with this. I understand the definition. The definition of submission means to put yourself under the authority of, or to be obedient to. And I admitted to her, and I'll admit to you all, for me, when I hear that definition, it's hard for me. I was one of those people that I slid out of my mother's womb, and I looked back up and I went, let's get this straight right now. You're not the boss of me. You're not the boss of me. That's just who I am. I have a strong, rebellious, independent spirit. Now, I can say through time, I'm 60, I finally have a better grip on that. Finally. But it's because I stepped back and I looked at what submission is. You know, you can bounce all through Scripture. We can look at it where we are to be submissive to our husbands. But I want to take you to Ephesians Chapter 5. Ephesians Chapter 5, verse 22 through 24. Says, wives, be subject to your own husbands as to the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ also is the head of the church, he himself being the Savior of the body. But as the church is subject to Christ, so also the wives ought to be to their husbands in everything. So I can look at this and other places, and I know that we are to be submissive. But if you look at verse 21, and he writes here, Paul writes here, and be subject to one another in the fear of Christ. When I started looking at what submission really is, submission is Christianity. That's what submission is. It's all about, I'm going to put myself aside, Philippians 2, having that mind of Christ. I'm going to regard others as more important than me. So I'm going to put myself aside and put others above me. That's submission. Why are we so determined to not want to do that in our marriages? We understand that's part of Christianity. We're striving to be like Jesus. Jesus says, I came to be a servant. But yet when we take it, we've listened to the world and let the world make a mess out of how beautiful that should be in our lives as Christians. It should be something beautiful because it's not about us. It's about us shining the light of Jesus. And one of the ways we do that is in our marriages. We shine that light of Jesus in our marriage by, it's not about me. And I'm telling you, it wasn't until within the last few years that I really wrapped my heart around it as we have been doing this and studying marriage more. And Wayne had his epiphany where he said, I feel like I've lived my married life all about me. And I looked and went, I know I have. I didn't mean it that way. We had a good marriage. But I never looked at it as, I'm going to put him so far out here. I want to make sure everything I do. Now, he's so much better at it than I am. I have to stop and think, he's so thoughtful. He changed. Boom. It was such a blessing to me. But that's what submission is. So as wives, we're going to be submissive, and we're going to be submissive because we're trying to be like Jesus. That's why we're going to be submissive. And then I want to throw this in here before I go into my next point. Some of these things that I'm listing, it's our role as a wife. One of my first seminars that we did, I had a woman sitting right down front. Everybody could see her. She was extremely vocal. And every time I would go through these points, she would go, when he does it for me, I'll do it for him. And I'm like, oh, it was very scary. Very scary. And it was very disruptive. And all I could think, though, was, man, what is going on in your home that has hurt you and bit you in this direction? What has shaped you this way? It hurt me for her. And so finally, I had to stop. And I had to stop what I was saying. I told her, I said, I don't know what's happening at your house, but can I stop and pray for you right now? And I did. And she settled back. I left the class and told Wayne, I said, I think I've ran off a couple. They will be leaving. She came up after the seminar that weekend and hugged me. But I understand as I list these things, remember, we're striving to be who we're supposed to be so that we shine the light of Jesus. That's why we're doing what we do. Doesn't matter how he's behaving. And that's tough stuff sometimes. Doesn't matter how he's acting. I'm trying to be like Jesus. And sometimes I have to put those blinders on and remember, I want to be like Jesus. Oh, I want to, don't say that, but remember that as we go through that. I know sometimes it's very difficult. I don't know your husbands. I don't know your marriages. Maybe your husband doesn't know Jesus. That makes it difficult. I don't know. But we are going to try to be who we're supposed to be. That's our goal. I say the word striving all the time. We're striving. I got my eye on the prize. I'm going to make mistakes, but I'm going to keep looking at the goal. One of our other roles as a godly wife is we're going to be respectful of our husband. You can look there in Ephesians Chapter 5. The very last verse in that chapter says, and the wife is to respect her husband. We're going to be respectful of our husbands. We're going to lift him up. We're going to lift him up and we're going to let him lead. And we're going to be thoughtful of his opinion. And I've put so many things under this umbrella of respect. I think back to my early years of marriage. And I mentioned I'd go to ladies' class and I'd do lunch with Marianne sometimes. And then other times I'd have the group of ladies to my house. So many kids, it wasn't fun to go out to eat. So I would have people to my house. Bring your lunch, we'll eat together. Because I needed social. I'm a social person. I'm a people person. And so I would surround myself with people all the time. So the young mothers would come over. And one day we were sitting there and we're talking. We're not being hateful. We're not being ugly. We're talking about real life. That's what we thought we were doing. And we're doing that thing where it was like, oh, well, my husband, he doesn't even know we have a dirty clothes place. He just thinks it appears miraculously clean. And we were like, oh, well, my husband, he hasn't cooked a meal ever. He wouldn't even know where the pots and pans are. We're doing this kind of thing. We're just laughing. We were actually laughing hard. Marianne actually happened to be there that day. And after they had left, Marianne hung around. She would do that and help me put the kids down for a nap or whatever. And so Marianne hung around. She goes, Tam, I want to talk to you. She said, the things you shared about Wayne today, when the girls all left, do you think they thought more highly of him? Or do you think they thought less of him? And I'm like, what are you talking about? What do you mean? And she says, the things you shared about Wayne, as you girls were talking about your husbands, did you lift him up in their eyes? Or did you break him down? And I went, ugh, yuck. And I said, well, I didn't mean anything ugly by it. And she goes, I know, we're just talking about, remember, respect your husband. And she goes, I've done it too. She goes, I just want you to kind of put that filter in place. Are you lifting your husband up with your words, what you say about him with other people? Do you do that? Well, a few weeks later, we're having lunch again. The same thing starts. Wouldn't even think about it, and it starts. And when it started, I'm like, wait, I remember this. And I threw out something. It was probably about Wayne's cooking because my husband can outcook most women I know. He is an excellent cook. So I think it was probably something along those lines. And I mean it. The faces changed. It was like, well, my husband mowed like he's never mowed before. And I'm like, yeah. And that's how it was. We were kind of one-upping each other on how great our husbands were. And I'm like, okay, good. Well, I can handle this. We can do that. But do you respect your husbands with your words, with how you talk about him or how you talk to him? Do you respect him? Do you show him respect with how you talk to him? You may have that woman that stands in the foyer. It's a rainy Sunday and she's going, I told you, get out there and get the car. The man wouldn't know how to dress himself if I didn't help him. And she's dead serious. And I'm like, please, God, don't let me be that woman. Please, God. I'm like, yikes. Be careful. Be careful how you talk to him as well. We all have our moments. I'm talking about the pattern that you have, trying to put those filters in place. And then that old saying, silence is golden. Silence is only golden when you're not being hateful, when you're not being ugly to your husband. Wayne and I'm surprised we had any friends the first few years of our marriage because we fought all the time, loudly, never thought about it. I say what I think, and so does he. He voices things. I'm direct, he's all around this way, and I learned very quick that I would say what I was distressed over. He would start in his roundabout thing, and I knew if my mouth opened again, I was going to say something extremely hateful. And so there were times I'd go, I have to walk away. Oh, it made him so mad. But he learned quickly that I was walking away because I was going to escalate this thing. It was going to get ugly. But then I'd always come back and work it out. Well, one Sunday I was at church. I think it was a Sunday. Yeah, it was a Sunday morning. Wednesday night, they'd announced that this guy, his wife was sick. So I see the guy Sunday morning, and I said, how's your wife feeling? And he said, I don't know. And I went, what do you mean you don't know? And he said, she's not talking to me. She's had a mat on for 3 days, and all I get out of her is, I don't know, over there. And I'm like, ooh. And all I could think was, what'd you do? What'd you do to make her so mad? But sometimes we're hateful, disrespectful when we're angry because we shut them out. Find a balance in there. Be careful of that. I have to be careful of that because I know the tongue has been sharpened, but I also know I can't shut him out completely. He has learned when I start going, I got to back away. He knows an explosion is coming, and I don't want that. Neither does he. We don't want that. But finding a way to show your husband respect in that way as well. And then I've also put under the umbrella of respect, building your life together. It's one of these things that I'm watching with couples that actually hitting about 45 to 55. It's the kids are older and couples are growing apart. And often it's because you've had the husband living his life and the wife living her life, and they really don't interact much. We had a couple that we'd go do dinner with several years ago, that if we were going to do something with them, I would have to call the wife and Wayne would have to call the husband. And I can remember several times we'd show up at a restaurant and whichever one showed up first would go, is my spouse coming? They never compared calendars. They didn't talk during the day. They had two separate lives. They're much better, by the way, but they had two separate lives. I illustrate it like this. I had gone to buy shoes in Denver. One Christmas, I wanted red shoes. And so I went into Kohl's and I found these cute shoes, little red satin shoes. They had a little bow across the top and they weren't very high. And I tried one on. It was so cute. And then I looked at the price tag and I'm extremely cheap, has nothing to do with the 5 kids. My dad had told me when I got married, I'll give you this much money for a wedding and what you don't spend, you can have. And for me, it was like cha-ching. It was a money-making thing. So I'm cheap. But so I was in there. I said, I'm not going to buy those shoes. They're too much money. Wayne came through. They're so cute. You should get them. And I went, nah, they're satin. You don't wear satin shoes in Denver in the winter. That makes no sense. So I put them back. And I was there in the spring, and my shoes were in the clearance section. I'm a size 8. There are never cute shoes in the clearance section. I believe the whole world wears a size 8 when it comes to the clearance section. But I find my shoes. And so I drop the right shoe down, and I try it on, and Wayne comes wandering around. He goes, hey, your shoes. And I went, I know. They're $10. I'm buying these things. And he goes, cool, try the other one on. So I drop the other shoe onto the floor. And I try to get my foot in it, and I look down, and it's a right shoe. And I'm looking, going, so we're digging through the boxes, trying to find the left shoe. We decided somebody actually had 2 left feet and took the shoes home with them, but I couldn't find them. But so often in our marriages, that's what it looks like. We have a husband and a wife in a home, and it looks like a healthy marriage because we've got this husband and wife in there, but they've lived 2 different lives, 2 separate lives. They haven't learned to become the one flesh, to make sure you've intertwined your lives together. And I put that under respect because sometimes it requires us, again, to lay ourselves aside. And because I respect him, my husband is a controller. He just is. I let him think he's in control. That makes him feel good. So, but out of my respect for him, when my schedule changes, I send him a text. I had to stop at a payphone and call him and let him know, okay, I'm going to do this because my schedule's changed. but I did it because I knew he thought I was dead somewhere, and I did that out of respect for him. So there's several things under that umbrella of respect. I want to make sure I don't leave one out. Oh, this is a good one, the important one. You need to learn to listen to your husband. And again, I put this under the umbrella of respect because I feel like it belongs there. As wives, as women, we're told all the time that we have these hundreds of words that we need to express at the end of the day. We come in from work, or he comes in from work, or however it works at your house. And we have all these words we need to share. And when I stopped and thought about this, here comes my husband at the end of the day. I have all these things I want to share with him. I want to take all of his time. I want him to listen to me. I need him to listen to me. And I had to stop and step back and go, he needs for me to listen to him as well. Because even if it's deep, important things, you're going to be the one your husband shares those things with. As women, we'll call a friend. We'll call our mom, we'll call our sister, whatever, and we'll share emotional, deep things with those people. Our husbands don't usually do that. Some do, but they don't usually do that. So if they're coming in and they're wanting to talk, it's important that we learn to listen. We learn to open our ears and make sure we're listening to them. Not, you know how it feels when your husband starts trying to fix you. You know that feeling? That's not what he wants from you. Sometimes he just wants a listener. And so we need to learn to do that for our husbands. And then part of our role is we become a lover. Sex is a part of marriage. It is a blessing that God has brought into marriage. We don't talk about sex in the church. It made Wayne nervous when I used it the first time in a seminar. I said, I think we should talk about sex. And he went, you're going to say that? Let's call it intimacy. And I went, oh, it's sex. We should talk about it in the church. And God designed that in our marriages, I believe, is a blessing. Now, it's tricky. And I don't know why in marriages it's difficult to talk about, because it can be, because it's embarrassing, even with the man I've been sleeping with for 40 years. It's still embarrassing. But we have to learn to talk about it. And I think one of the most difficult things about our sexual relationship and our marriages is understanding when you're wired differently. I'm going to touch on this with the guys, not like I will with you, but we are wired differently. And understanding that, just because he may be more sexually aggressive than you doesn't mean he's a sex maniac. He's just different. In our marriage, I'm the sexually aggressive one. It's kind of changed. I hit menopause and my whole life went crazy. And Wayne looked at me and goes, you do still find me desirable, right? And I went, I think so. I don't know what's happening here. I don't know what's going on. But that's part of our married life, and making sure you're talking about that and making sure you're understanding that it may be different for both of you, and being patient, but talking about it. That's part of our role. And then part of our role is we are a friend. This is bigger. This is a bigger thing than we talk about. You need to be best friends with your husband. I love Song of Solomon. Song of Solomon 5:16 says, "This is my beloved, and this is my friend." I love that. This phase of my life with Wayne, he is my friend. We travel all the time, and I have other friendships, but I don't get to see them. He is my friend. And I had to understand that building that relationship with him is so important. Again, this is another area where in the church that marriages fall apart because they haven't built a friendship. Those kids leave home and they have nothing in common. And so you need to be working to build friendship with your husband like you did when you were dating him. Remember those days when you were dating him? And he'd go, whatever you want to do Saturday, you go do your thing, I'll do mine. I'm going to stay and watch football. I'm just going to stay in and watch football today. You go do your thing. And you're going, oh no, I'll come join you. I'll make popcorn. We'll watch football. I love football, because you want to be with him. And so you need to remember, don't quit doing that. Find ways to build those friendship things with your husband. Wayne and I, he mentioned he's the Broadway musicals. I wanted nothing to do with that when I got married. I'm like, Oh, they're singing the words to the movie. This is ridiculous. I couldn't figure it out. I like him now. I do. I learned that I needed to get to know him and bend a little bit in some of those things. And now he'll listen to Leonard Skinner. So it's a good thing, you know. But you figure out what ties you together, what builds you together. And you need to work on that friendship. That never stops. That should never stop. We were watching people, Wayne and I are people watchers. We were watching a couple in a restaurant one day and we were hard on them. They were an older couple. They never spoke. They never spoke while they ate lunch. In fact, I sat down and then they sat down. The waitress handed the menus and they looked at the menu. The woman got out her phone and he just sat there and watched her on the phone. They never spoke. And I told Wayne, I said, will that be us? And he looked at me and he went, never speak? You think that'll be us? And I went, okay, that part, no. But I hurt for them. Now, like I said, I was hard on them then. I backed off and went, I don't know how many years they'd been married. They may have needed a moment of comfortable silence. Maybe that's what it was. Maybe they'd talked all the way there. I don't know. But make sure you have a friendship with your husband. It's very, very important. Don't just tolerate each other. And then part of our role that I was taught was you are to be a homemaker. And they take this from Titus 2 where it says, older women teach the younger women to be a keeper of the home. And in the books that I was reading in the early 80s, it all came down to being a homemaker. And that's not what that says. That's not what that says. And I do remember when I was being taught that, it was so much pressure on me. So much pressure on me. Here I was with my 5 children. And I did daycare in my house all day. And they were telling me in ladies' class, basically, they would show me a magazine picture and go, okay, your house should be spotless when your husband comes home at the end of the day. And they would show me this in a book. There's a list in a book. When your husband comes in at the end of the day, lower the lights. It's been a stressful time for him. Make sure the children keep their voices quiet. He's had a hard day. You know, line your children up on the couch in their clean clothes. Make sure they're clean and dressed properly and sitting quietly when he comes home. Make sure there's a tablecloth on the table with a nice dinner and candles. And I'm looking at my children in my house going, holy mackerel, I can't do that. That's not real life. That's not real life. So I started studying it more. I wasn't looking for a loophole, but I thought, I need to know what that means. I need to know what that means. Well, that phrase that they've turned into keeper of the home actually means to guard the home. Our job is to guard the home. You want to make sure that your home is a refuge. It's a place where your family wants to be. And that's going to look different in every home. I have my 5 children. I have 4 boys and then a girl. Didn't do it on purpose. It just kept happening. So we had 4 boys. And as my boys started getting married, I'm watching their homes. And in my mind now, I have a picture of what a home should look like. And when their homes didn't look like mine, it's when I realized what a judgmental young woman I was. Because I got 5 kids. If I can keep my house clean, you can too. And I thought, that's not fair. It wasn't fair. And I backed up and realized everybody's home is different. Whatever works for you. It requires you to sit down with your spouse and go, okay, what do we need to do to make this a place we'd like to live in? What do we need to do here together? Is it cleanliness? Is that important? It may not be important to you. That was the other thing. You have to have your house spotless because somebody could drop by at any moment, especially as a preacher's wife. Oh, spotless at every moment. And I'm like, okay, get that pile of laundry off the couch. The doorbell rang, kind of thing. But that's not real life. So talking with your husband, what do we need to do together? And I love that the younger families are doing a much better job of this than my generation and older. You do it together. You've planned it out together. It may be, can you plug in the crock pot as you're leaving for the day? Or will you run the vacuum? Or can you take him to this sports event? And you do it together. And you make sure your home works, but make sure you talk about it. You want your home to be a peaceful place. for your family. That's what it means. You're going to guard your home. What do you need to do in your home to make it a place somebody wants to come home to? So that's what that term means. And I've marked off the Proverbs 31 woman because we all know that that's impossible. But understanding that that's something we strive for. I have days where I nail like 4 of them really well. And then the next day it's 4 different ones that I'm doing. Understand that's what I'm striving for. I want to be a godly woman. I want to be a godly wife. I call the journey of marriage from stilettos to orthopedic shoes. That's our journey. We start out in stilettos, it's hot. Oh, baby, whatever you want. I love you so much, kind of thing. And that's how my marriage even started out. And I started out in those stilettos and I was instantly in running shoes, having children. If you choose to have children, children affects your marriage. It does, it affects your marriage. And if you're in that running shoe stage of life, remember your husband still comes first. You need to find a way to let him know that he still holds your heart. I know that little baby, those children, oh, that's a love you can't explain, but your husband still comes first. And this is tricky. This is another area, I'm telling you, even Christian homes where marriages fall apart because the wife chooses to just become mommy and forgets that she's a wife too. And I get it. I understand. You can't do, I put the baby in the closet for the weekend. It's just you and me, honey. Yoo-hoo! You can't do that. That's not real. So you have to figure out how that works. But make sure date nights are important. I think that's why it's important, again, that God is church family. Get to know each other. Older women get to know the younger women. They're not going to leave their kids with a stranger. I'm the creepy, I love kids. And I have to remember when I go into a new place like this, like on Sunday morning, we're coming back on Sunday morning, I can't come in and go, come here, honey, let me hug you. They're going, creepy lady, who is that? So you have to get to know them. You have to get to know them to make sure that you can be in their lives and help them with their children. It's so important. Older women, the younger women need us, and they need us to love on them and help them on the journey. And I said, love on them, not spank them. Love on them. Then let's see. Then I went into a phase of life that I was so confused. I didn't know who I was anymore. I didn't know if I was flip-flops. I didn't know I was stilettos. I didn't know who I was. My children hit school age. I had been mommy for so long that when they didn't need me in every moment, and even if you homeschool, when your children hit that independent age where they don't need you in every moment, I was lost. I was lost. And I can remember being a younger woman looking at these women about that age, old women in my young woman eyes, and then looking at them going, hearing them say, oh, I got to find myself. I don't even know who I am anymore. And I remember thinking, oh, brother, you're right there. What do you mean find yourself? And then I hit that brick wall because I lost Tammy. I didn't know what talents I had anymore other than fixing food, running a vacuum, wiping noses. Let me tell you about Jesus, little child. And I only knew how to talk about Jesus and Jesus loves you so much, I'm like, who am I? And I struggled. And what I did, and I find so many women do this, I took physical control of my body. I got in the best shape I've ever been in my life. I walked and ran and exercised because I had more time. So I did that. And one Sunday night I was at church and I had 3 men that Sunday night tell me how nice I looked. I was wearing a jean skirt and cowboy boots and some kind of white top. I was modestly dressed. I wasn't indecent in any way, shape, or form. But the first guy told me, Tammy, you're looking good. And I'm like, thanks. The second guy, and I'm like, thank you. Third guy, and I went, oh, yuck. What is going on? And I realized I'd lost my balance. I'd lost my balance in there. And there's nothing wrong with taking care of yourself. You need to do that. You need to do that. You need to take care of yourself physically so you can serve. When you don't take care of yourself physically, then your temple will shut down. So I get that, but don't make it all about that. This thing, I'm sorry, it's decaying, like it or not. It's It's going away. We're getting older every minute. But make sure as you're going through that phase of life that you talk to your husband. I remember I shared with Lane, I said, I'm struggling a little bit here. I've lost my balance. I don't know who I am. And his words of wisdom were, why don't you get a new hobby? I'm like, I will poke your eyes out. It is so deeper than a hobby. You know, I was so struggling. But I knew I needed to talk with him and let him know where I was at. You call it midlife crisis. Some people do whatever you want to call it. For me, it was real. And I needed to figure it out, and I needed to communicate. Don't try to go through it by yourself. It can be a tough time because some of the women, when they do that with their physical body and men start going, she looks good, turns their head. Christian women, don't lose your balance. Be very careful in there. And then that last phase is the orthopedic shoe phase. Well, I jumped right over I'm back in high heels now. They're just pumps. They're not very high. I love the phase of life I'm in right now. I love it. Wayne and I are best friends. We do everything together. It's awkward when we don't. It's a weird thing. I had a friend go, you never go to lunch with us. Why won't you go to lunch with us? And I'm like, I'll go. It's not fun, but I'll go. And that's not true. But my husband, we have fought Satan for our marriage. We have fought each other for our marriage. And we're at a place now where I adore him. We fought like cats and dogs today. We went out to Oak Ridge and I was the navigator. Oh my word, if anybody heard us in the car, they were going, these people do marriage seminars? And we got back to the hotel and I was looking over at him and he looked at me and he goes, are you okay with what we're doing? That we're going to do this a little different. Are you okay with that? And I adored him. I just love this phase. And I look back, I look down and it's, a lot of you are going, aren't you already in the orthopedic shoe stage? The gray hair is a new thing for me. I had dark hair last year and then COVID hit and I have gray hair now. That's how it affected me. We'll stick to that story. So I look at the orthopedic shoe stage and I'm like, okay. I look at my mama. Love my mama. My mama is this wonderful little person. She's always had bad feet. In fact, back in the 70s, I'm in high school, my mom had to wear orthopedic shoes because her feet were bad. In the 70s, they were ugly. They were these chunks of white and these chunks of black. That was your choice. And all I could do was pray to God that curse didn't fall on me. I like shoes. Don't do that to me. I looked at that and I thought, okay, I don't want to have bad feet. Then I got a little older. And I was in a mall one day, and this was about 10 years ago. I was in a mall, and on a side thing, on the end cap, there were these shoes, and it said, like walking on a cloud. And I looked at the shoes, and I'm like, those are cute. And so I got the shoe, and I dropped it on the floor, and I put it on, and it was awesome. And this little teenager that worked there came around the corner, and I went, hey, look at these shoes right here. Do these look like old lady shoes to you? Do they? Do you think these are old lady shoes? And she goes, no. And I'm looking at her face going, oh, well. And I went, no, don't lie to me. Do they look like old lady shoes? Do you think they look like old lady shoes? And she goes, well. And I went, I don't care. I'm buying them. They're comfortable. I loved them. And so I take them outside of the store. I walk out and Wayne goes, you bought some shoes? And I said, yeah, look. And he goes, you bought old lady shoes. And I went, they're comfortable. The orthopedic shoe stage is that stage of life where you've worked through things. I'm not saying there aren't problems. There are health issues. There are money issues. Those don't ever go away. There are new kinds of money issues. There's different problems, but you do it together. You've worked through these things. In fact, I go and stay with my parents for a week every summer. That's just something I've done since my kids were little. I go and stay with them, and my dad will be sitting in the living room, and he'll have his Bible or the newspaper or something in his lap, and my mom will be off in the other room. She's a little weirdo. I get weirdo from my mom. And she'll be off in the other room. My mom can sing beautifully, but she never sings normal at home. She'll be back in the other room going, I'm like, you okay there? You know, kind of thing. And my dad will look up and he'll go, isn't she beautiful? Isn't she just beautiful? And that's what I want in my marriage. I want, when I'm being my weirdo self, or when I'm being my hateful self, or when I'm being all of these different versions of Tammy, Wayne can look through that and he sees Jesus. That's what I want him to see. That's why I think our role is so important. It's not about who we're being for our husband. That's part of it. But is my life bringing God glory? Am I doing what I can to bring God glory? And when we do that, our marriages are blessed. That's what I pray for all of you in this room, is a marriage that brings God glory. That's what we want, to be those women. Will you pray with me, please? Father, right now I want to lift up all of the marriages represented here tonight. I just, Lord, want to place them in your arms. I know that they're already there. I know they are, Father. I love the fact that you love us so much and you want what is best for us. And I pray that we are a people or a women that are willing to be that we're willing to look at ourselves and push out the things that don't bring you glory and push out the things that are really self-focused. And we know how difficult that can be, Father. And I love the fact that you're patient with us as we go along that journey. I love that. We'd be lost if you weren't a patient God. I thank you so much for that. I pray that we are a people that always are in your word so that we know what you want for us. It's this love letter that you've written that we can grow from. And I pray that we remember that and get to know you better and get to know your son better. I want to thank you for Jesus. Jesus is what ties us all together in this room. And I thank you so much for the fact that he came and set that example for us. And just help us as we struggle along this journey to be like him. Thank you so much for that. And it's in his name we pray. Amen. Okay, ladies, we're going to go right back in and we're going to play a game and we'll be done. Thank you.